Hi, my name is Eric Goldman. I'm a professor at Santa Clara University School of Law. I also co-direct the High Tech Law Institute. I've been blogging now for 10 years, and it's part of celebrating 10 years of blogging. We put together a series of posts that talk about what's changed over the last 10 years and some of my experiences blogging. I've been working with a research assistant, Addam Kaufman, who's been helping me out for the last 18 months. And Adam suggested that perhaps we could actually do a video to talk a little bit about blogging and to explain some of what we do and why we do it. And I thought that would be a fun way of complementing the series of posts that we did. So today we're going to talk, Adam and myself, about blogs and about the blog, and see what we can learn from each other. So I'm going to turn it over to Addam Kaufman. He's a second-year law student at Santa Clara University School of Law. He has been my right-hand person at keeping the blog up and running over the last 18 months, and much of the experience with blogging, or my ability to actually do the blogging, is attributable to the help that he's given me. So it's over to you, Adam.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, so the Technology and Marketing Law blog is pretty descriptive. It gives you a pretty good clue what you're going to get when you get there. There's the reference to technology law and marketing law, and I blog about them, along with the co-blogger Ben Cat, who sadly is in Seattle, can't be here today, but he's with us in absentia. The descriptive name reflects where my head was at in 2005 when I launched the blog. It was really a chance for me to talk about things I saw in technology law and things I saw in marketing law. At the time in particular, I was doing a series of articles that related to marketing law, and so I was especially interested in that piece of it. The way I think about it, though, is that this is a blog that allows us to talk about new developments in the area of internet law, IP law, and advertising law. And all of those are fair game for the blog. Usually there's going to be some meat, and then there's going to be some opinion or some implications of that. And the blog is an outlet for us to cover all three of those topics.
How do you decide what topics you're going to blog on, and what's the process there?
Yeah, it took me a little while to figure out my blogging voice and to figure out what made the cut and what didn't. I remember some posts back in 2005 that today I would never do something like that. But, for a while there, I was trying to think of myself as keeping up with the latest news and technology, generally, not just law. And I wasn't going to be competitive at that. I wasn't going to break any new ground. That was too hard. Yeah. And for a while, I was blogging on things like the Patent Reform Act, and I was trying to do every iteration of the Patent Reform Act, and I wasn't very good at that either. But the way I think about blogging is I see hundreds, if not thousands, of items of news in a particular day, between my email, my RSS reader, the social media content that I consume, the people I talk to, the articles that I read. I'm constantly gathering information as part of being an academic. And the blog is my place for me to share the thing I thought was most interesting that day, and to say, here's what happened, or here's what I saw, and here's what it might mean for you. So I really think about the blog as the tip of that funnel, that there's all this data that I'm gathering as part of my ordinary life, all being funneled down into the thing I thought was most interesting that day. I don't blog every day anymore. I wish I did. So it's not quite like that, but the general question, or the filter that I'm applying is, what's the most interesting thing today of all the things I've seen? There are some pet topics that I have where I tend to blog every case or every item that I see, just as a guess that might be the most interesting thing that day. So certain topics have been blog stalwarts, things like 47 U.S.C. 230, the law that says that websites aren't liable for third-party content. Right. I blog almost every case I see in that area, or the keyword advertising cases. I blog almost every item that I see of news in that area. So there's some things that I've overweighted, but for the most part, it's the most interesting thing I've seen that day.
Post on things that are interesting to you, or do you post on things that you think are interesting to a general audience?
Obviously I pay attention to the audience and what they're interested in, but if it's not interesting to me, then I don't really want to blog it. So I gotta have the motivation to do it. Internet jurisdiction is a topic that gets pretty good traffic from other people, but it's so boring. and I don't
Not
really
to
want to
me,
blog
but-
it. See, so that's it. So I know the audience would like me to do more internet jurisdiction cases, but I'm not that interested in them. So, but a lot of it really is trying to sort through what are the new developments in our field that actually make a difference, as opposed to things that kind of told us what we already knew. And so things like internet jurisdiction often don't make the cut because I don't think they tell the new developments tell us that much that's really different.
Talk a little bit about the start of the blog, and then also talk a little bit about some unique moments that you had while you were blogging. Things that might be unique to blogging or might be unique to the law that occurred in the last 10 years.
Yeah, let's start with the origins of the blog, and I did discuss this in the blog post. So let's
Right,
just go back
yeah.
through it a little bit.
Yeah.
I had two students come to me in fall of 2004 who were taking my internet law class and asked why I wasn't blogging. And I knew some other people who had been blogging at the time. There have been people like Eugene Volokh who had been blogging for a couple of years, had a pretty good reputation by then.
Yeah.
I had a colleague who had done various flirtations with blogging. So I knew that blogging was out there. I'd never really contemplated for myself. But when they came to me and asked me about that, it really struck me, well, why couldn't I blog? Why
Yeah.
wouldn't I blog? I have things I want to say, and maybe the blog is the right home for it. I never really thought what it meant to do blogging, but at the time it sounded like an okay deal. I had another star student who preceded you, Rex, who built the blog for me and put all the technical implementations in place. And so I had all the infrastructure built by him, and then all I had to do was just start blogging. And I didn't really have a sense of my voice. I wasn't quite sure how I was going to apply the filter, what's going to make the cut. I hadn't built some of the systems I have now to actually find new stuff that other people aren't talking about. But once I had the place to do it, the response from an audience was actually really invigorating. One of the problems we have as academics is that we don't actually know if anyone ever reads our articles. We can get download counts from SSRN, we can get citation counts from Westlaw or from Google Scholar, but we don't really know if people are reading it, and we almost never get any feedback on our big scholarly articles. We don't get a lot of back and forth. And when I first blogged, I could see how many people were reading my posts. I could see some guess of where they were coming from. So I remember an early time when I was looking at the IP addresses, I saw there was an IP address from the FTC web.gov domain. I thought, okay, someone at the FTC is now reading the blog. That's really interesting to me.
That must be, yeah.
Well, I know that now maybe they might be paying attention to me, where I'm not sure if they're reading it in the scholarly form. And then the ability to get things turned around in my voice really quickly was really invigorating to me, that I could respond right then and there to something that I was seeing. So the combination, I thought, really got me motivated. And so from the very beginning, I spent a pretty large chunk of my time working on the blog because it was the most interesting things to do, and I have stuff to say. Let me mention a few things. I remember when the Grokster opinion came out, which discussed Grokster and internet law.
Yes,
It's a pretty important opinion for internet law. And I remember that we coordinated among some bloggers that we were all going to try to blog the case shortly after it came out, and then we were all going to have a discourse about it, a kind of academic symposium about the case, but within 24 hours after the ruling came out. And I thought that was a really interesting way of helping spur the conversation, of getting us talking in a way that in the old days would have been a year later. There would have been some academic journal that published a series of very lengthy footnoted articles about the case, and then we might understand the case. But in the blog world, we could have that conversation instantly, and people within a matter of 24 hours would have some sense. What does this case mean? What are we going to do about this case? And I remember I did not only my comments about the case, but then I also did a separate distillation of other people's comments. I did two different posts, and I actually got as much or more traffic to the second post as I did the first. And that really showed my eyes that in some ways it isn't just my original comments, but sorting through all the discourse and helping people find other pointers and digesting that was also exceptionally valuable for people.
And the community.
Kind of highlight. Another highlight I'll point to is my first big link from another blog, and I remember when the traffic just started overflowing, and it was from a blog that I think is still around, but I don't know anyone who reads it. Wonkat. Do you remember Wonkat?
Wonkat.
Ha ha ha! You don't even remember it.
No.
And Wonkat was for DC insider gossip.
Okay, I've heard of it, but
there was a
it's
famous,
long forgotten.
There's now a famous case, a high-profile case involving Steinbuck versus Cutler. Cutler was a woman who was blogging about her sexual affairs in Washington, D.C. She put on a blog that was private in the sense that she hadn't publicized it, but it wasn't restricted access. And she used a pseudonym for her various folks, but it was not hard to start to figure out who she was having sex with based on all the details that she was providing on this private blog. Wonkat found out about the blog, and so then Wonkat started talking about everything they could, all the gossip they could derive from that. And then when Steinbuck, who was one of the people having sex, who there were references to some of his particular preferences, sued her, I started covering the case. And I didn't really know either of the two players. I didn't really care. I was interested from an inner law standpoint. The fact that they had sex was irrelevant to me. The fact that he had certain predilections that might be a little bit unusual, didn't care. All I cared was it's an internet law case. Here was a blogger who was trying to blog pseudonymously, who got outed, and not only did she get outed, but her romantic partners got outed. And so when I blogged about it, I blogged a little thing. There was a ruling in the case, and I put up a short description of it. I said a few sentences of commentary, and then one saw a law professor comments on Steinbeck versus Cutler, and then boom, the traffic just overflowed. And I thought it was a really interesting moment that showed me the power of blogging and the responsibility, perhaps, that I have as a blogger. That I am talking about real people and their real lives, and it's something that I think forced me to be that much more thoughtful about getting things as correct as I could, because it wasn't just an internet law problem, it was two people's lives who were potentially going downhill. I think looking back over 10 years, I'm struck by how many of the earlier cases were really cases that we didn't have the right language or the right vernacular for. And now that we have the vernacular, we would say that was an internet privacy case, or that was a cyberbullying case, or a revenge porn case. But usually when we were blogging it, we didn't have that terminology in the first time that we saw it. Things like the Steinbeck versus Cutler case. We weren't quite sure, what does it mean for someone to have a private blog? That didn't even make any sense. Now we, of course, understand that better. But the first time something goes sour, usually those people at the beginning are going to end up being surprised. For us, all that's interesting. That's an integral part of the scope of the blog.
Since we're talking about the internet here, I imagine that you've probably met people purely through the blog alone. In your professional career. Is that true? And can you talk a little bit about those kind of stories?
Yeah, so there's a community of bloggers who are all following a similar trajectory in life. You know, we are all trying to do the same thing, maybe covering the same topics. And so the community of bloggers has been a great way for me to meet people who I might not have otherwise met, and to engage them in a dialogue. So there's some people who I have a pretty close professional relationship that developed because they were also bloggers in similar spaces. People like Venkat, who was my co-blogger. I read his blog, and we were competing for the first blog post on things that are of common interest. And finally I thought, this is ridiculous. Why don't we merge our efforts together? Why don't we work together rather than trying to compete with each other? And I had never met Venkat in person. I did speak to him on the phone when we talked about actually putting our efforts together. But I didn't meet him for about 3 years after we had started working together. It didn't really matter. He did his thing and I did my thing, and we were able to communicate online without ever having to sync up in person. There's some other well-known bloggers in my space who I would have been friends with either way, but the blogging commonality has made us better friends. People like Rebecca, my co-author on my casebook. She and I both are constantly blogging, and that's part of the way that we talk to each other and got to know each other better, and perhaps even developed some trust that each of us could work together. So those are a couple of people who are very close professional relationships that developed almost certainly because of the blog,
Because of
and
the
may
blog,
not have developed
right.
the same way otherwise.
Yeah.
We also, in the late 2000s, put together a series of blogger gatherings. We actually call them
Interesting.
Blogger, BLAWGER, so they were bloggers. And we did it for the Bay Area. So we went around and we tried to find all the people who are doing legal blogging in the Bay Area. And we said, why don't we just get together? We'll get a room, we'll get some snacks, and then we'll just talk. We'll just talk as bloggers. And it was really great to do that and meet a bunch of people who were blogging on things I had no interest in and never really paid attention to. And the gathering then was a way for us as bloggers to meet and to find our points of commonality, and made a number of contacts through that I would have never met otherwise. So blogging is an interesting and good way to make new friends.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people who read the blog who I've never met, never gotten an email from.
Yeah.
Every so often, every week or every 2 weeks, I get an email. I'm a longtime reader, but I've never talked to you before. But, and then they have a question for me, or they have a tip for me, or whatever the case may be. There's some reason that prompts them to contact me. And I used to do a lot of speaking at public events, and invariably after the event, people come to me, oh, I've been a long-time reader for a blog, it's so great to meet you in person. Let me tell you a little comment about something that you recently blogged about, or whatever. And so it's been really fun as I would take the trips around the country, going and meeting people who I wouldn't have otherwise heard from, but getting a chance to talk with them in person.
And maybe copyright and software, or what's interesting to you this year?
You know, and the funny thing is I don't really think about at least blog material in that way. I have all these various
That's
alerts
interesting.
that send information to me in addition to the things I'm ordinarily seeing as part of my
Right.
daily review of content. And remember, I just pick what I think is the most interesting thing that day. And so it could be in a wide-ranging scope of topics. It could be internet law, IP law, advertising law. It could be something that's totally different than all of those. So I don't actually think about, okay, we're going to shift from blogging about topic A to topic B and really and get up to speed on topic B. In some sense, it's a little bit reactive to the things that are going on around us.
Yeah.
It's interesting noticing that there's a number of topics that have been blog stalwarts that have kind of fizzled out. There's not nearly as much to say about them.
Can you talk about those
Yeah,
topics?
absolutely. For example, the spam case line. When
yeah.
the blog started, canned spam had just been passed. That spam was still a high priority item in many people's minds.
So
we
you're
were
talking about electronic marketing in general.
well, and email marketing in
Yeah.
particular. And spam's really just not a big issue. We're not seeing that many cases in the courts anymore. We're not seeing any legislative activity on spam.
Right.
It's just kind of fizzled out.
Yeah.
Most cases we're seeing now are text message spam. So there's still some spam-like
yeah.
cases, but the email marketing stuff is pretty much over. There's just nothing to blog about. Another topic is adware. There were all these battles in the mid-2000s about adware and trying to crack down on browser side installs
Yeah.
that were going to that cause pop-up ads or other types of advertising displays on a user's computer. And legislators were freaking out, and regulators were freaking out, and plaintiffs were freaking out. And it was a really exciting time to blog. There were a lot of stuff to say. Who talks about adware anymore? That's just a non-issue.
It's funny that you say the time that a lot of people are freaking out is the time when it's interesting to blog, but that's the truth of these legal matters, right?
Well, it's usually because we're going through some kind of adjustment
Yeah,
between the new
absolutely.
technology and how people are using it and
Yeah.
what consumers really want,
Yeah.
and when people are going too far and when we're actually seeing the devolution of something really
Right.
new and useful. Certainly over the last couple of years, we've seen really big shifts towards things like mobile. And so
Absolutely.
we're seeing new cases that relate to mobile
Yeah.
operating systems or mobile apps that we weren't seeing before. So we're definitely seeing some new material that that is never, we had no separate category for on a blog. We weren't tracking those as separate cases, but we're seeing a number of those kinds of cases coming up. I think in the end, the privacy issue is really the one that I'm struggling most with, because there's so many facets to privacy discourses today. It's dominating our discussion in my field, and there's a lot of things that I don't keep up on, or I'm not able to know all the depth or expertise in that area. And so I'm having to be selective. What can I actually really legitimately cover on privacy?
Yeah.
So this year I think we'll probably do more things that will fall into that privacy bucket. But it's gotten to be such a big topic, it's actually hard to really keep up with it.
With the privacy topic, one thing that I've noticed is it's kind of reached an international level rather than just a domestic level. And so although we do have a lot of new laws this year in California and new laws happening here, it's kind of becoming international. Have you ever thought about taking your blog on the international scale and talking about things internationally rather than just domestically?
Yeah, and I did have a moment, I don't remember when, but at some point in the blog I decided I can't cover the international topics with regularity.
You have to
And
choose,
I
right?
did, and part of it is because it's not always clear what's really new information internationally, and I don't understand the whole context. I don't know what the backdrop of the various
Right.
laws are.
Yeah.
I have blogged on some international developments every now and then. I remember, for example, the keyword advertising topic. There was the European Court of Justice ruling.
Of course, yeah.
There was also an Australian ruling
Right, yeah.
that were both, I think, pretty important for the global perspectives about keyword advertising. And I did blog about those.
Yeah.
But I always felt a little bit out of depth because I didn't know the full range of what else was in the law around those particular
course,
rulings,
yeah.
where I'm not quite sure that I could fully contextualize it. And then, of course, in many of the cases, there's a language problem. If I'm not reading the material in its native language, then
Yeah.
I'm also losing some nuance from that. So
Right, yeah.
I realized relatively early on that there was so much material to blog just about domestic stuff. I had more than enough to say on that. And I felt a lot more confident that I understood that than I did the international stuff. So I would love to do more international blogging, and we do get some good guest blog posts from people who actually
wonderful.
have legitimate expertise to blog those. But I don't think I'm likely to do that. I think there's more than enough for me to keep up with domestically.
Yeah, we definitely have our share of problems here in the U.S. to take care
Well,
of.
we're
so.
a big market, and we got a lot of law,
Right.
and a lot of
Yeah.
other countries actually look to us as leaders in legal development. And so
Yeah.
just making sure that people are able to know what's going on here is the value not only domestically, but also for the international readers.
What are you proudest about the blog in general? You can take it anywhere you want. So.
Yeah, I'm probably the thing I'm proudest about is that I'm still doing it. If you think about blogging as a marathon and not a sprint, that I still am as excited about blogging today as I was on day one, and that's not the case for many people. We've seen
Yeah.
so many blogs come and go along the way, and
Usually, I think the 2-year mark, or maybe
if
even the
that,
1-year mark,
yes.
yeah, is kind of a mark of a successful blog.
I would see a lot of the sprinters who come out, they've
Right.
got a lot to say,
Yeah.
they blog up a storm, and then
first
the
couple months
blog
and-
just dies
Yeah.
because they run out of gas or they run out of topics.
Right.
So the venerability of the blog is perhaps the thing that I'm proudest about, only because it is hard to do it
Yeah.
every single day and to continue to be as excited about it as I was. It's not something that I think everyone feels, and I still do. I did ask readers for ways in which they could tell us that the blog helped them somehow. And the responses I got to those were just incredibly heartwarming. I didn't get a ton of them. I didn't get thousands of people saying, "Your blog changed my life." I wish I had, but I think that's unrealistic. But the people who did respond, when they said, "Keeping up with the blog made me cogent enough to be able to get a job," something like that is incredibly powerful for me. It's a reminder that the blog is an input to other people's outputs. So if I can be part of the communication flow that helps them do their job better, or to go and be a better professional, or to get some insight out of life that they weren't otherwise getting, And then they can go off and do great things. There's this legacy that the blog can help be a part of. Not just what we do, but whatever all the other readers are able to do with it. And so I saw some really heartwarming comments about that, and that's really, I think, what keeps me as excited about the blog as I am. That I'm hoping that every now and then we're helping someone do a better job or make a good decision or improving their life somehow. That would be really satisfying.
It's wonderful. And as I said earlier, I've heard a lot of people who have never met you in person, but they respect you deeply just based on the blog and the content that you have there. Well, thank you very much. I think we'll end this here. Is there anything else you'd like to say to the viewers? Or?
No, I just want to say thank you to you personally, not only for setting this up and for putting together a really nice list of questions, but for all your help keeping the blog running.
Thank you.
The blog ultimately is about the content, but if we don't have the right infrastructure for it, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't work, and you've made a material, beneficial impact on my life, and I'm very grateful for it.
Thank you. And thank you very much, everyone, for watching this interview.
Yeah, thank you much.